3, 2, 1.
Here we go.
Hey everybody, welcome back for another week of the Let's Dig In podcast. I'm your host, Chef Rich Rosendale, joined with our co-hosts, Christopher Rieloff and Rachael Barnett. And this week was great conversation. Got to revisit with one of my friends from the show, Recipe Rehab. Many of you that were big fans of the show will recall Evette Rios was just full of energy every week. Really learned a lot and was inspired so much working side by side with her. So we were able to catch up with her and see what she's been up to since the show, talk to her about building a personal brand, as well as the impact of social media on culture, our kids, her being a parent like me, was really an interesting topic. So without further ado, let's dig in with Evette Rios. For those of our listeners that don't know a lot about you, if you can maybe just kind of introduce yourself and kind of give us your background and what you do. A lot of people have heard me talk about Recipe Rehab and you and Vicky, of course, but we'd love to be able to have you give us an overview.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my name is Evette Rios, and I've sort of worked in TV in like everything that relates to home. So Richard and I worked on Recipe Rehab together. It was such a great show. It was for CBS. I think we were, really affecting people, viewers. I mean, to this day, I don't know if it happens with you, Richard, but they come up to me and they're like, that was a great show. Like, I wish that it was on. I think it was super useful for people. And so that was really the first like food show that I've hosted, but I've hosted shows on HGTV and TLC. I've been on the Rachael Ray show. I'm one of her like regulars on her daytime TV show. I'm a contributor to the Today Show. And so just kind of everything, the sort of, I guess, where food and home and design and entertaining sort of overlap is where I live. And I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids. One of them is about to turn 7. I have no idea what to buy him because he's like changing what he's into every day. But so he's about to turn 7 and the other one just turned 5. So I've got 2 little kids that, it's been a little bit intense with the COVID and the homeschooling at times. And, but yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
Well, I know that whenever we were doing the show, a lot of times we were kind of like early on in kind of the runway of creating a brand. We used to talk a lot and stuff like that. How have things kind of changed like since the show? Have you kind of continued to like go in the same direction? Have you tried to blossom out into different types of media
Yes.
since we've done the show?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that I could not have anticipated is just how much I would be doing for myself now. And I was I would say I was a late adopter to social media and blogging and YouTube and all that stuff. I was not one of the early people that jumped on those platforms. So I think since Recipe Rehab, it really has taught me that you've got to create your own content. You've got to do things that you believe in. You've got to put out into the world what you think is important. Because I think the opportunities for a big network like CBS to, back what I thought was like a phenomenal idea and amazing hosts. But it was like, it had everything going for it. And yet, we weren't on for as many seasons as we would like to. So it really taught me that you've got to really believe in your own projects and put what you want out there. And I think we're in a really interesting time where you can do that. And especially now with COVID. So I didn't expect to be doing this. I never sort of fancied myself as being a producer and an editor and all the things, lighting designer. But I think, it's been an interesting time in that since then we've really been able to get into that, which is cool.
How has things evolved or changed for you since COVID has struck? I mean, being on TV shows, being, in studios, how has that shifted for you since COVID?
Oh my gosh. So it was so crazy because literally it's funny. I was talking to someone earlier today and they were like, March 12th. Like, I don't know if this date is as emblazoned in all of your memories as it was for me, but like, I specifically remember March 12th. I was going to be on the Wendy Williams show that day. And it was a food segment. I was making all these like Puerto Rican dishes and I had worked so hard, like asking my grandma, who was starting to forget everything, like what her recipes are. And it was just like, it was kind of a mess. And I was about to go on, the food was prepped. I like, made sure everything looked good. And then they had announced that, COVID was going to be a thing and that the next day there was going to be no in-studio audience. And Wendy was just very uncomfortable with dealing with food in the wake of that and just really felt like very sensitive. She has, health issues and things like that. So I think she was particularly concerned. So I was literally backstage about to go on and they're like, I'm sorry, we're going to have to cancel your segment. And so I went home, kind of tail between my legs. They thankfully paid me, even though I wasn't actually on the show, which was very nice of them. But yeah, that was the beginning. And so ever since then, like kind of everything has changed. I mean, nothing is quite the way it was. I mean, I've done one in-studio appearance since March 12th. And that was also on the Wendy Williams show. Very, you had to have like this, 10 feet apart, 2 separate food stations. She was prepping on one side, I was doing the other. Like it's just been so different. And so now what I'm having to do is I shoot everything myself. From my home. This is our house in Pennsylvania, which is where I'm living. And then what I've been doing with a lot of shows is that they will take B-roll of other, so if I'm talking about, let's say, holiday decorating, I will submit B-roll of the different trees and then they like edit it on their end. So it's really been like so different. I mean, we've just had to produce everything ourselves, and so I hope that changes because it's just so awesome. Production is amazing. There's so many people and, there's all these, directors on the floor and in the control room. And it's just like, it's such a great coming together of so many different trades and individuals and personalities. And so it's sad to see that go. But it's never going to be the same again, like Rachael, Rachael Ray, like I said, I've done a couple segments for her. She's like in the middle of her home, and she's very comfortable there. And who knows if she'll ever, leave, honestly, because it's kind of awesome. And it's a different side of everybody.
It's crazy that, how different sets have changed. I just recently worked on a Netflix show with Chef Vicky Krinsky, who I guess you guys are both very familiar with.
Absolutely. I love her.
She speaks so highly of you, but she says the same thing. I mean, working on the Netflix film, the production, the team, everything was so different from how it used to be because of the COVID and everything that, we weren't allowed on set. Just the chefs, we had to stay in our trailer. We could not.
Wow.
That it was a big thing. And she said that it lost, a lot of the magic of being on set changed and went, like we still obviously had a great time, but just that on set kind of magic, she said, was, not really there.
Well,
I know. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say is I remember when we were doing the show, like, I mean, it was so fun, like throughout the day. I mean, it didn't really feel like it was work. I mean, whether you were, if you were doing a segment or we're out there, we used to joke around. And a lot of times I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I can't imagine trying to manage us. Cracking jokes the whole time and, couldn't.
So true.
But I mean, I just, you look at how things have changed. I mean, did you, because I know when this all kind of started, I was actually in Las Vegas and I remember flying out there. And then when we were flying back, it was like the airports and even Las Vegas itself was completely different. Just
oh
from
my gosh.
a couple of days. I mean, it was almost like, I was like, oh my God, I'm like the only person here, like at the Venetian. What the heck is going on? It was like,
that must have been crazy.
It was weird. And I remember taking pictures and posting it. Did you think that when you referenced that moment when that happened, did you think that it was going to be pretty bad, or did you just think like, oh, this is probably just going to be like a month or so?
Honestly, for whatever reason, I mean, I was kind of a Dr. Fauci like devotee, like many of us were, but I kind of felt like I'm a true optimist. I honestly believe that everything is going to get better and that the world is going to get better. But for whatever reason, I really believed that we were going to have a very rough road ahead. Right. And I, for whatever reason, felt like it was going to be a year, 9 months to a year. I just felt that for whatever reason. It seemed like I know people, you know what I mean? And I know that not everyone is going to do what they need to do, and having kids that literally they will like lick something and put it back on a store shelf. Like I just was like, wait a second, you know what I mean? This is not just going to get cleaned up right away. So that was I kind of felt like things were, but I could have never predicted just how many industries it would influence. What was happening with the restaurant business is just so crazy. And the fact that different rules, in Florida, it's totally different than it is in Pennsylvania, than it is in New York. Like that's just crazy to me too. I kind of felt like we would be all on the same team and figure it out and make rules, and people would like try to abide by them.
Well, I remember
in Florida, probably Rachael can tell you that in Florida, there is no virus. You go outside and there's nothing.
There is
crazy.
There's a virus here in Virginia.
We know that there is a virus, but that's not really good. Yvette, I was just listening to you, I can kind of like relate your energy, Vicky's energy, Rich energy. It's kind of like somehow you can connect those dots and know that you were at some point you worked together, all of you. So what are the factors that you think that contributed to have the success in all of the different business that you have?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like every day it's funny because I think that we all can identify with this. You have this feeling of like, especially now with COVID, I think I've been really thinking about like, what am I doing that really matters? How am I like making an impact? Just because so many people are suffering. And so I don't know that I feel like I've had a tremendous amount of success. Like on paper I have, but I still, really aspire to do more. And I think maybe that is part of what drives, me and Richard and Vicky and all the other people that I've met, throughout my career that are really trying to, do things. So I don't feel like, I feel like the trait that I think has most helped me is just oh my gosh, the cat now, look at this. It's like they come out of the woodwork.
I was going to ask you if you have a cat because I can hear it.
So, okay, you guys, she's like that's literally, awesome. I don't even know how old she is. She's somewhere between like 20 and 23 years old. Like this cat, it's remarkable. Like she might've died years ago and now we just have like a ghost cat around the house. But awesome. She's so loud because she's going deaf, and the meow, it's like earth shattering. So if you hear, I'm so sorry. This is like so crazy.
No, it's totally fine. Like I said, we've had like virtual zoos on the show. We've had people with pets, and especially in the very first episodes, I think we had Dustin with his like dog barking and like actually like attacked him during the interview.
Oh my gosh.
So totally fine. Yeah, totally fine.
That's hilarious. But yeah, I think that the real like characteristic that is helpful to have is just kind of an interest, a wonder of the world. You know what I mean? Just really wanting to learn and know, understand, connect. I think there's a lot of people that work in television and in media. Not specifically journalists, but more as hosts that I've run into, and I'm just kind of shocked. Like I will spend, hours with them and they don't ask a single question about another person. And it's just kind of like, wait a second, like, how does that work? You've got to be, I've found this one quote, and I tell it to the kids all the time when they tell me one of the words that we don't allow in our home is boring, because it just really bothers me. But I tell them, like, you can't be bored unless you're boring. Like there's always something to, capture your attention, to make you wonder, to make you curious, to ask questions. And I think that takes you somewhere, because people want to talk about themselves. They want to teach, they want to share their experiences. And the more you open yourself up to that, the more, people guide you along the way. And I think that's super important.
I also feel like you also like, when you find your path, like this is what I love doing, and wherever that leads, it leads, but you're confident in like, this is what I want to do. And it's like, because you see a lot of people that it's like, well, I'm into this, I'm into that, I'm doing whatever. And it's kind of like, you know, you got to just don't worry about what everybody else thinks and just kind of just do your thing, you know, follow your path, you know, whatever your DNA is, just do it, you know?
I agree. And I think also like what you mentioned, you know, you have to have some, I think, and I like having kids again, you know, this is all kind of coming to light, seeing the world through them and things like that. But you've got to have some focus. You know, I think a lot of people mistake like being a hustler and having all of these like gigs and doing all these things as like, you know, being entrepreneurial and having all this, you know, that's like a positive thing. And to an extent it is. You know, you see the people and they hand you their business card and it's like president, you know, zookeeper, you know, chief marketing officer. You're like, oh, Jesus, you do all this stuff. And that's great. But the reality is like, I think a lot of time people do that to disguise the difficulties of going through and sticking to one career and one path, you know, because it does get hard. It does get boring. You know, there are times where you are just kind of over it, but you've got to get through things to get to that final outcome. And so I think a lot of it is just, you know, sticking to, you know, having an idea, going with it for a while, seeing where that goes. And if it doesn't, you know, work out, then you move on to something else, but having the clarity to just follow your gut.
And what you just said is really important about that. There's so many people out there that they kind of like use the hustling of the entrepreneur words into like something that it is not really what it means. It's not really what you're doing, but I think that what you just said is like right on point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And you've created such a great personal brand for yourself. Can you tell us what's the difference in creating a brand for yourself, or tell our listeners the difference in creating a brand for yourself or a product brand? You know, like how do you personally build the two? Like you've got your personal and then the product, like, can you talk us through that?
Sure. I mean, I think a personal brand is like easier and harder at the same time. I mean, I think in a way, like you know, there are so many things that we love, like when you're coming up with all the visual stuff and the logos and stuff, I think that can be a very daunting task because you're like, oh, I love pink, but I also love blue and I love this and I love that. But that all aside, I think the easiest thing to do, especially as you're, you know, developing a brand, is probably through social media, through YouTube and through all these other platforms, is just to really make a list of this helped me tremendously when I did it. Like, what are the brands and what are the products that I routinely use, that I believe in, that I feel aligned with? And, you know, that was, you know, like the Seventh Generations and the Honest Company and the Siete Foods and all of these, like for different reasons, I came up with this list. And as your brand grows and you have more opportunities to do all of these brand integrations and you can work with different companies and all that stuff, you've really got to think like, okay, do I really believe in what this company stands for? Am I for what they do? Am I like, is their DNA sort of aligned with mine? And that really helps you shape what your values are, and sticking true to that stuff, I think, is very, very important. So in a way, the personal brand is easier because you don't have to be as universal, because you're like, look, I am who I am. You like me or you don't like me, you know, I'm going to speak about politics, or I'm going to speak about women's rights or reproductive rights or whatever. And that's just who I am. And that's, you know, clear because you are who you are. But then when you're building a product, you kind of need to be a bit more universal. I mean, you still need to have a belief structure, a value system, but you've got to appeal to, you know, a wider range of people. So in a way that is, I would say, like a little bit more watered down version of what your personal brand is. But anything that you do, I mean, you've got to start with who you are and what you're putting out there and what you believe in. And then that'll trickle down to any, you know, future products you develop.
I don't know if you remember, but like when we were doing the show, I remember we were like in the green room and we were talking about like, you know, we were like still kind of very early on. And I mean, you had like your website and you were doing the show, and, you know, it was almost like talking about having a product, you know, and yes. I think that there's a lot of people that from the outside looking in, they see what you do, but maybe their vehicle is baking or maybe their vehicle is fitness or wellness. But it's still like, I think the things that you're talking about, you still have to have a voice, a message that defines like what that brand is. Like, what is it that you're like, you know, what is it that you're saying, you know, because I think a lot of people just look at it as like, it's just, you know, creating a logo or creating a website, but it's still like, what is it that you stand for? You know, that's what really kind of comes through. So
agreed. And one exercise that really helps, like, you know, all of your listeners and viewers, if you're having a hard time with this, it's much easier for people to articulate what they don't like, what they're not, and what they don't want to be than it is to articulate what you want to be. So I would start with a list, you know, I am not, you know, someone who wears ball gowns. Like, I am not a girl who paints their nails. Like, I am not someone who likes fussy things, or I am not someone who, you know, whatever those things are, that becomes your list that you can sort of start with. It's much easier to do than to think about the things that you are. And then once you've got that list, you can really identify, okay, well, if I'm not fussy, then that means maybe I'm, you know, pragmatic, or maybe I'm like someone who's more like into function than form, or, you know, you can kind of like figure out where you fit in the cracks of what you definitely don't want to be.
Hey, everybody, we're going to get right back to the conversation with Evette Rios. Before we do, wanted to make sure that everybody knows you can catch every episode that we've done since starting the show. Go to richrosendale.com, select podcast, and there you will see links to everywhere the show is available. And also, if you want to see the video version of the show, you can go to Rosendale Collective on YouTube, and you can see the full episode list and complete episodes. So anyway, now let's get back to the conversation with Evette Rios. You talked about how when you were kind of maybe being a late adopter to social media, and we are both parents. And, you know, I mean, we all of us here today embrace and use social media quite a bit.
Yes.
You have to, whether you like it or not. And sometimes, you know, when a new social media platform pops up, it's like, oh God, another one. But the one thing that I wanted to talk to you about was kind of thinking about it as a parent. Is as many good things as there are with like social media. Do you ever kind of stop? Because I look at like my little girl Francesca and Liam and Lawrence, and you know, I kind of like, I see the benefits of social media, but I also kind of step back and I'm like, have we created a monster? Are there like pitfalls in this journey that, I mean, I feel fine as a parent and everything for me using it, but I'm kind of more concerned about like, what is the path for like our kids and stuff like that. And I was kind of curious, just you, Evette, as a parent, do you think about
I think about it all the time. And I recently watched this Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, it
changed everything.
But it was great. Yeah. And it was really insightful, but it's scary. Yeah. Very
scary. But the thing that I wish that there was, you know, because kids are growing and changing, and I'm not quite at that age where they're actually putting content out. I'm at the age where they're still like taking it in. They're so into YouTube, and so many of the videos that they watch are just the most horrendous. I don't even like, they're like these bro videos where they hide baby crocodiles in each other's beds. Like, I don't get it. It's just so crazy, you know, to create their own slip and slide out of a bunch of like stuff they got at Home Depot. It's just, they're a mess. So I'm not a huge fan of just that kind of, you know, type of content. But I wish that there was a way, and I think Snapchat, you know, aspired to do this, but like, it should be impermanent. Whatever kids are posting, you know, let's say before they're 18 years old, like it should disappear. Like there should be a blank slate for them. And in fact, I have a niece who's 20 now, she's going to be 23. But she went through phases like in high school where she would just deactivate all her social media networks and like just deactivate all her profiles and delete all her photos and just start over. And I think that's a really healthy thing to do, you know, and as a parent, that might be something that I would consider is like, okay, every, you know, couple months, you just delete everything and just start over again, because so many things that people post stick with them. I was reading an article right before I, got on with you about this new young woman that was going to be the head of Teen Vogue. And they found tweets that she posted, when she was in college in 2011, and they were inappropriate, but it cost her this job, 10 years later, so that's the scary part to me, is how all of this like just doesn't go away.
I don't have kids, and I still agree with the fear of, I have nieces and nephews that I'm fearful for what social media's impact is going to be on them. The amount of hate and bullying that's online is so sad. I will openly say I posted a TikTok and got 580 comments of pure hate. Which I don't understand. And I don't care. I brush it off, whatever.
No, of course. But come on. That's ridiculous.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. And
I can brush it off, but can the kids?
Yeah.
Yes.
Kids who are absorbing everything that's being put out there on social media, can they take all that bullying and that hate? I don't think so. Like, that really has to affect them.
Well, and that is definitely kind of like where I was kind of going with it, is that for a lot of comments from somebody that's posting something, it's just a comment. And I really kind of think about like the person that's on the receiving end, it may be way deeper, way bigger, and for me, I've really tried to, over the years, like stop and I try to comment, or when people message me, almost kind of more impactful, I think, is when people direct message me. I try to reply back to every single person personally as much as I can. But I think about it as like through the lens of a child, and I'm kind of thinking about my own kids as they're kind of getting older and saying like, don't get me wrong. I'm probably not the best person to be questioning social media. We use it so much, but I just feel like all of us kind of have a responsibility in this process of not letting this train go down the rail and hit somebody. And kids, particularly, which the next question I was going to kind of talk about is even looking at social media and the youth. One of the things I was thinking about is that, do you think that you will begin to see like where does it end with right now people are using a lot of filters, and we're using all these things that are kind of augmenting what reality is. And at some point, can you see a world like not too far away where people are using kind of augmented reality, where, instead of like playing a video game, you're like stepping into it almost.
Oh, for sure.
But do you see what I'm saying is like, what are we creating this path for like kids where does that end up? Do you ever kind of think about that as far as like the impact on just children in general?
Absolutely. And I think honestly, the antidote to that is community, being in front of one another, being able to physically connect with each other, nature, being outside, like all of that, because that is real. You know what I mean? Talking to someone face to face, like going out on a hike, like that's so much more. I'm really into the idea of the virtual reality stuff. Like, can't wait to get one of those headsets, because I feel like if I was able to play a game where someone was chasing me, trying to kill me, I would actually get some cardio in. So I feel like I'm really excited about the possibility of this stuff. But I agree with you. I think we have to make a concerted effort to, and this is why COVID was just really sucked, because it really pushed us back into this more like virtual, fake space that we're all in. And honestly, a lot of us feel way more comfortable here because we don't have to be seen, and I think that's like, it's a big human fear, is being seen, for all of our flaws and all of our weaknesses. But that's the only way we're going to be able to push past, all of this fake world taking over, is just by being more real, as much as possible.
That's crazy. Evette, I wanted to ask you about, now that we're talking about the social media and the bullying, that, at the end of the day, it's not just important to keep an eye on the kids, but also there is many adults that they're not able to handle all that hate that Rachel was talking about. What do you think that, or what would you suggest to somebody that want to create a brand, how to handle social media, how to handle, because you're going to see that many people, they're going to start their own business or their own brand, and they're going to start posting, they're going to get this kind of hatred like throughout the social media. So what would you suggest to those kind of people?
I think the main thing that is super important is, really closing the loop on what it means to be social. I think a lot of people and brands use social media as just a one-way conversation to say like, here's our new, collection. This is on sale. Go to our website, buy this. And that is not what social media, I think, at its best does. So I would say if you were interested in launching a brand, the first thing you want to do is follow people who do the similar or the same thing as you aspire to do. Follow them, comment, show them some love, let them know that you appreciate what they're doing, because there's no such thing as competition. I really do not believe that there is competition. I think that there is plenty for everybody. I think we all have our special sauce we bring to every meal. And so there's no reason to feel like a competitive nature with each other. That being said, I do sometimes get annoyed when I go on, Instagram and I see these moms that are a size 0, breastfeeding on the beach in Bermuda with their like 6 kids. And I'm like, okay, that's it. You know what I mean? So that does make me a little crazy. But I will say, so follow those people and those brands that you feel like are very similar. Make sure to start engaging with them, start sharing other people's stuff. Like, I think that this is such an important thing to do too, is a lot of the time you're like, okay, I'm only going to share like my recipes. I'm only going to share my designs. I'm only going to, share my product. No, to go ahead and if you find something you like, post someone else's stuff, but tag them, let them know, oh my God, I totally fell in love with this recipe. I made it. It was awesome. The whole family ate it. Post, tag them, let them know that you did it. That's going to create like that way, when you actually put your content out there, you're going to have people who are excited to see what you do because you've shown them so much love.
Right.
So I would say that's like one thing that's super necessary to do. The other thing that I think is important is, because so many of us are sort of dancing in all these different spaces, you may have the food stuff, you may have, a restaurant, you may have cooking school, you may have all these different things, or in the case of Vicky, she's got like, the fitness angle, she's got the food angle, she's got so much going on that I sort of like to divide, especially Instagram is an easy way to do this, but if you think of your feed as like 9 squares, right? Because it's like 3 across and 3 down, whatever. Take those 9 squares and really think about like what percentage of each of what percentage of those 9 squares do you want to devote to those things that you're passionate about? So let's say it's like, women's empowerment, or it's like mommy pride kind of thing. And I want to make sure to post 2 inspirational things about being a mom. So out of that 9, I would do that for 2. And then let's say 2 of them are recipes. So then I would devote 2 to that. And maybe one of them is like a green, eco-friendly, product or something that I really love, and that would go there. And then that way, if you kind of editorialize, like by starting with those 9 and you plan ahead, so you're like, okay, well, I already did 2 food posts, and now I need to do something about like being a mom, or I need to do something about like an eco product that I love, or whatever those things are. That kind of helps you organize things, because the main thing you need to do is be consistent. And unfortunately, I'm not as consistent as I should be. But if you plan ahead and you've got all your pictures and your posts sort of in your mind, and you do it in this like 9 square system, it does help tremendously.
I've always thought you've remained consistent though over the years. I mean, you always put, I see in my feed, you've always put a lot of stuff out, because it's hard to continue to just generate content, even if you're documenting it or whatever. But I've always thought that you've always kept a lot of stuff coming in the feed.
Thank you. So. I appreciate that.
So probably my next question goes for both of you, for you, Evette, and for you, Rich. Do you think that has it gotten any harder to put your message out there? Like, because we know that social media 5 years ago, it wasn't as it is now. And just after last year, it just kind of like it blew up everything. It wasn't just, TikTok was one of the biggest one, but then Instagram, it grew up like crazy. They released Reels, then TikTok, it went out. Like, I mean, it went viral like crazy for everyone, not just for kids. That used to be more for like adolescents and kids. So what do you think about that?
What do you think, Rich? You want to jump in there?
I mean, well, think about like even right when social media was really starting to take off, which really isn't too long ago. If you really think, about it. I mean, when we were doing the show, I mean, social media was relevant, but it
yes,
like it is now. I mean, if you went on CBS or NBC, you hit so many people. But now, even just talking about trying to get your voice out, there's so many platforms. There's so many places. I mean, there's good elements of it because you can really kind of hit a very narrow audience if you're trying to hit people that are really that are just crazy about pastries or donuts or, you know, collecting stamps. You can find those people, but it's also like saturated. I mean, media, there's so much out there right now and there's so many different avenues. I just think it's harder and maybe it could be easier, but I feel like it's probably more harder to kind of get out just because it's different than it was when you could just go to like CBS or ABC and just, you know, do a show. I mean, now there's so many different platforms you have to be on to continue to be visible.
Yeah. Oh, I 100% agree. I mean, I think the positive thing about that is, you know, like growing up watching food, you know, shows and things like that. And, Lydia Bastianich and things like that. And all, you know, all the Emerald and all these like tried and true, like classic TV chefs. I do feel like in a way, we are kind of coming in the back door of media by being in this time and place and having social media and things like that. Because I remember like watching Emerald and it was like pure performance. Like you never really got a sense of like how Emerald really lives. Like, what does his wife look like? Is he married? Does he have kids? Like, what is his kitchen like? Is it huge? Is it small? Like, does he live in the country? Does he live in the city? Like, all of these things that you grow to love him and you want to know that stuff. He never really got a chance to show that on TV, because when you're on TV and you're representing CBS or NBC, you're doing your job. You know, you're just showing them what they want to see. You're laughing at the host jokes and you're telling them what they want to know and reciting all these facts, but you're not really showing them like what you're all about, what your values are, what you think is funny, what you think is cool. So in a way, we can actually have more connection with our audience,
more
being
intimate.
Able to do, because you're able to be like, okay, like the kids are, you know, just came home from school. I have no idea what I'm going to make. Here's like the 3 things I have in my refrigerator. Like, let's see how it goes. And it took people like Rachael and Emerald and all of these, you know, I mean, Rachael was kind of a second wave, but like all of these, you know, tried and true chefs, so many years to get to the point where they were able to show who they really were. And now we can kind of start where they left off. And so that's the promise of it is that transparency and that real ability to connect on a human level, you know, and I think that that's positive.
Yeah. So you said earlier that once the pandemic hit, you started having to do things at home and send it into a team. How does that work with you? Are you still creating your own content and having people work on it? Are you doing it with a team?
Yeah, so I have, I definitely cannot do it myself. I think it does take a team. And I think anybody who, you know, is out there and has created a big brand themselves without having any help, I'm just amazed, because editing is so difficult. You know, shooting yourself in a compelling way is not easy. So you need to have, I mean, at least I do. I have a guy. I feel like I'm such a New Yorker. I got a guy. No, I got a guy. And he's awesome. He's a young guy. And he's a shooter and an editor. And so we make a schedule and he comes out every month or so and we shoot some stuff together. He edits it. He's affordable, because this isn't a number one thing, right? Because it can get very expensive, especially if it's just stuff you're putting out there to build your own brand and someone else isn't footing the bill. So you want to find someone who's affordable. You want to, you know, pay them a living wage, so they're not like an indentured servant or anything. But you want to, someone who's going to be like, they're starting out in their career, they maybe have more skill than experience, that kind of a person. And that helps me tremendously. I invested in some equipment. I invested in a wireless lav, which was really important because I think sound is almost more important than picture sometimes. So I did that. I got some lighting equipment. Honestly, a lot of what I do these days, is find the broadcast stuff. They just use the iPhone. It's pretty crazy to me, but they're fine with it. But I do have a nice camera also, although I don't use it as much as I would like to. And then the next thing that I feel like I really want to create is some sort of a sound booth or something, because I end up having to do like a lot of voiceover, and it just sounds like I'm in the middle of a tin can if I do it just in my house. So I've got to find some way, even if it's like a closet and blankets and stuff like that, to be able to do that.
That's where I started recording our podcast, was in a closet with all
really?
my clothes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Definitely. So where do you find inspiration from other Instagrammers or other people out there? Like, where do you draw inspiration for what you want to post?
I mean, I think one of the major things is, to really, like I said, just kind of follow the people that you admire, really like, and just figure out what it is, look at what they're doing and figure out what it is about them that you find so compelling. And some of it is like outright copying of what they're doing. Like, for instance, in the design space, there's an influencer named Emily Henderson, who I love what she does. She does these really quick little videos where she's like, I'm going to show you how to design, how to style your nightstand 3 different ways. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of a good idea, because people do care about that. I mean, basically my nightstand consists of like water bottles and like Dr. Seuss books right now. But it's in theory, I think it's something that people really are interested in. And I like how quickly she does it. And I like her production value. And it's all very nice. And so I look at things that she does, and I kind of am like, oh, that would be cool. And maybe I find my own angle on how to make it my own. But I think the main thing is just to really watch what people who you admire are doing. And I think that can be tremendously inspirational. Then the other thing that I think is important, which is the exact opposite of what I just said, is to disconnect completely and just like take some time to just not be online. And I think that's where you get your like most original ideas.
Because you think that that's going to be good.
Yeah, you've got to, because
I
think
literally my plan for tomorrow is a digital detox.
Yeah, you have to, because then you think about all the stuff that like, because otherwise we're just kind of regurgitating what everybody else is doing. And I think that that's where the most genuine angles and ideas come from, so I think that's also an important step. So like, kind of know when to hold them and when to fold them, in the words of Kenny Rogers.
But we talked to a lot of people over the last year, and a lot of people that have food businesses, or they're CEOs, or they're chefs. We've seen a lot of people that, from the outside looking in, for a lot of people, they just assume that people are putting all these big budgets and doing all these things. And the reality is that over this last year, people have been pivoting and doing whatever it takes to still get the job done. And, before, you had this outlet where you're going on a TV show and on a studio setting and everything like that. But there's media and content still has to be created.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're basically creating that, still figuring out a way to generate all that content, how to reach all those people. And I'm sure, like you mentioned, like Rachael Ray and all these other people, they are too. I mean, over the last year, you just haven't had studio audiences. And it's really kind of just, I think it should be inspiring for a lot of people out there, because I feel like this pandemic has been a roadblock for a lot of people, and they just kind of just been like standing there waiting for things to go back to the way they were.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those elements, whether it's a restaurant or a TV show, whatever it is, some of that may come back, but some of it may not. It's just, you almost got to kind of, fast forward to still figure out a way to check all the boxes that you need to do for your business,
Mhm.
but not necessarily just wait on things to go back to normal, you know? And
I 100% agree. I mean, I think that I think we've got to, get more comfortable doing our own thing and not waiting for, a network or a brand or whatever to buy into an idea that we have. I mean, I think that that's exactly, you're exactly right. I think as people who work in the lifestyle space, I mean, I think we've got to show people that there's a need for what it is that we do all the time, because, otherwise I just don't think that there's going to be many. It's a difficult time to sit on your sofa and wait for someone to call you and say, like, I've got the perfect thing for you. It's just not the time to do that. You've got to sort of start doing what it is that you'd like to do. It's a chicken and egg situation. And then someone will, be like, oh, I love that Rich is doing that. That's awesome. Maybe he could do X, Y, and Z because this is similar. And that's just kind of how it is these days.
well, I know we're getting coming close here on the hour, so we're going to go for another round of questions from each person.
Yeah.
And then of course, if there's anything, Evette, that we haven't covered that you want to
I want to
us.
hear about what you guys are doing. What are you guys up to?
We're doing all sorts of different things. I mean, over the last year, as you can imagine, a lot of the catering and events has probably been, I'd say, the biggest challenge for us. We have our event space in Atlanta, and we just took a really big hit with, nobody's catering,
No one is. Yeah.
So we're still trying to get that back up and running again. I think there is some pent up demand. People think of all the weddings and parties that people had to put off. So
yes,
I think both here in Virginia and in Atlanta that we'll see a demand for that again, but it's going to take a little while. We're still plugging away with, restaurant has been challenging, but, we're still plugging away with that. This podcast, to be honest with you, kind of started off like somebody had asked us to do a podcast and kind of just to be a guest, and was like, wow, this is kind of an interesting way. It's really kind of intimate to be able to go into people's homes, and from anywhere in the world, by the way. I mean, we've done some podcasts, trial and error, over the last year. Again, Dustin, I think he was attacked. Chris, do you remember that? Dustin had his dog on in one of the first episodes. I think it was like a dog that he just brought into his house, and the thing went berserk halfway.
Oh my gosh.
It's like kind of attacked him. We were like, that's all part of the show. So I think, like with everybody, I think I really like having these conversations, because it's also an opportunity for people to have a glimpse into, hey, it's been a hard year for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Be open and honest. And, I think if there's elements that you share or another guest shares or something that I talk about that can inspire or help somebody else, maybe it's somebody that wants to build their own brand, or maybe it's a restaurant. It's like trying to figure out, how the hell to get back to, where they were a year ago. I think the answer is like all around you, and you got to have conversations with people and peel back the orange, and to be honest with people about how you're doing that.
Yes.
But one of the things I wanted to kind of bring up was there any memories? I remember doing the show. For me, it was the first time doing a show like that, where I had to memorize things and read a script. You were great, by the way, and I learned I learned a lot working next to you, as far as like that. You just kind of like turned on the energy, like when the camera was rolling. You always have a lot of energy, but it was, I really learned a lot. And was there any things that were like memories that for you that were like some of the more memorable moments, or any of the things that you kind of missed about doing that show?
Well, honestly, I miss working on that show so much, and I feel like I really loved the concept. And I think we should have a conversation like offline, because I really feel like there's such a need for it. I think people like to this day feel like, and with so many like new diets, people are intermittent fasting and they're doing the keto and they're doing all the things. Like, I feel like there's a need for a show, or if it's a show or it's a platform or whatever, that shows people how they can take things that they know and love and just transfer it to these, new or these, dietary restrictions or just healthier versions or whatever. So I really, really feel like there's still such an opportunity with that show. And I loved it. But the thing that was like amazing to me about working with you and Vicky is that the food actually tasted amazing. Like, this was the shocker, is that I was like, holy shit, these people are like actually pulling stuff from over here and like making things, because it was kind of intense. I mean, we did take some liberties with the timing, but in general, we had to stick, our production schedule was pretty intense. So we had to stick, there wasn't like time for you to make like a 4-hour souffle or whatever, but like, there was like a timing issue, and everything that you guys made was just like so thought out, and I was just so impressed, and I learned so much from both of you about, all things. I learned all about the buffalo meat. I know bison meat. I didn't know how important bison was and all that good stuff. It tastes just like beef, but better, I guess. But like, that kind of thing, it was so incredible to see, you guys at work, and I just was constantly amazed.
There were some times I remember, like, they would always do these analogies, and sometimes, it'd be a long day for us sometimes, and we were maybe on like the last shoot or whatever, and we were kind of like just there, and little stupid stuff would like make you laugh. And I remember them talking about some of the analogies that were supposed to be these shockers, like that's like eating 10 bags of potato chips. But sometimes, they'd be back, and the entire team did an amazing job. But sometimes the analogies, we were like, that's really not that much. Like that's like drinking an entire can of Coke and a bag of chips. And we were like, that's not really that bad, Mike. That's not that bad. But it was like, and and then of course we could not be serious after that. We'd like be laughing our ass off the entire, and then they're wanting to finish up and recording. But it was great. I mean, I remember Sonia and the team, they'd come out, they were like NASCAR, like,
Oh, I know. It's
they're
crazy.
Like, changing out the pans and all this stuff. And I'm looking around like, oh my God, this is great. They're going to come work with us at the restaurant. Yeah. But those were some of the fun things. And when Vicky was on the show, we were kind of giving her a hard time about the carrot cake. I don't know if you remember that.
God.
Blowing out the candle on the cake. That was kind of fun.
Please. Well, some of Vicky's, I will say, and I would say this to her face, but some of her recipes tasted a little too healthy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, it was kind of like, some of them were very wholesome. Like, you just kind of felt like you wanted to put some like bacon grease on it or something.
Yeah, right.
But I do think a lot of, and this is one of the lessons, from this show, is that, you do kind of need to change your taste buds a little bit. Not everything is going to taste like, 3 donuts and a bag of chips. It's just not going to be that way. So you've just got to learn to love.
Sometimes I eat 3 donuts. I mean, I'm just going to say.
There's nothing wrong with eating 3 donuts, okay?
It's all about balance in life.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. Balancing the donut with a cup of coffee.
Well, Chris and Rachel, you guys take the last questions.
All right, I'll go first. What would you say to people who are starting their own brands and maybe feel, on social media, who maybe feel stuck in a rut and with content creation and just feeling pressured with content creation and the daily grind or whatever you want to call it of it? What would you say to them to inspire them to keep going?
Well, I mean, I think the number one thing, and I say this to, just about anybody who will listen, but like, I think the world needs every voice. Like, it needs your voice. It needs your perspective. Your perspective matters. Nobody is going to have the exact same perspective as you. And I think that by being someone who is out there publicly, whether, through whatever platform you choose to use, you might be a journalist and write a column, or you might use social media or whatever, you are going to be like a beacon of hope to other people who may look at you and think like, okay, this woman is just clearly has all of the weird things or some of the weird things that I feel like I have. And I feel like a real, camaraderie with her. And that matters. I think that, we're seeing a time in the world where, I'm hoping and I'm seeing that there are, opportunities opening up to all different types of people, that have different backgrounds and different points of view. And that's so important because we all need to see ourselves in someone, and so I think you've got to let your freak flag fly and do you as much as possible. And you will find people who will love that because everybody's looking for someone to kind of help them feel less weird and less alone in the world. So I would say that that's like one thing. And then the other thing I think that's important, what I was talking about before, like really following people that you admire and all that stuff. But if you have a hard time coming up with content yourself, pair up with someone, just collaborate with other influencers, with other people that you like, where you like what they're doing. And it doesn't have to be someone that has more followers or is more established than you. I mean, that's great. But a lot of the time, people who are like that might not be so willing to help out, someone who is, further down in their careers, just starting out. So you can do this with someone else who is, at the same level of experience as you. And that gives you like kind of instant content, just talking to each other, going live on Instagram together is so powerful because it lets those people know that you're doing it. It lets your followers know, it lets their followers know. So it's like a great way to cross-pollinate. But things like that can help fill in the white spaces, because then you're getting your voice out there. You're doing it in a fun way. Ideally, it's people who make you feel comfortable and fun and funny and make you feel like you're your best self. And so that kind of stuff is really useful.
That's great. That's great to hear. One last question, Evette. I wanted to ask what tips would you give to people that they're trying to balance their home life and their busy career?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you've got a career that is like a legit 9 to 5, that's very separate from what your home life, and it's just very clear, like I'm a banker here, but then at home I'm a mom. And I think that I can't really speak to that as much as I can speak to the people who can find those ways to bridge the gap between their home life and their work life. And I think whenever you can, it's important to do that. And again, it like kind of goes back to that idea of like transparency. I think people do want to get to know you. They want to understand like what your home life is like. They want to sort of, understand like what your lifestyle is like, because I think we're all trying to figure it out. We're all not sure that what we're doing is right. Am I like watering my plants enough? Like, am I, feeding my kids, healthy enough meals? So anytime I can like show people the good and the bad, of how I'm doing things, I think that's helpful. So I think if your career can overlap with your home, that'll make your brand and who you are and what you do that much like easier to accomplish. If you try to keep them too separate, I feel like they both kind of like aren't their best, because you're trying to kind of like keep like two animals away from each other. And I don't think that's super easy. So I think if you can find a way to like collaborate, you're not going to like do like a podcast sitting on the toilet or anything, but just definitely finding those.
Who knows?
And that's where you are right now, right, Chris? But no, I mean, I think that's like the more you can do that, I think that's the magic.
You mean the podcast in the bathroom?
Yes. Exactly.
I think that there's something compelling too about like, the authenticity. And I mean, if I was going to say anything to like Lawrence or Liam or Francesca, it's like, you know what, just do your thing, whatever your thing is, just do that. I always hope it's going to be the right thing. And in business or in life, whatever it is, that's always been, like I try to like really simplify like business adversity or personal, whatever it is, I kind of just try to boil it down to like real simple, like do the right thing, like whatever that is, like try to do the right thing. And I try to always think that's kind of like that guiding principle. But I think that in social media and branding, it's like, just do your thing, like whatever it is. And the minute you start doing somebody else's thing, like you're following some, something that you think should be the direction. I think that's sometimes when you kind of get off course, and that's why I kind of keep pointing back, and it was fun to talk to you about the whole parenting concept, social media, because I'm worried sometimes that some people, you can get really easily swayed by the numbers or the likes.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm worried. Yeah, I just worried that maybe we're setting up the wrong indicators, that maybe that's not real. That really shouldn't be the roadmap or the signs to follow. I
100% agree, and I think you're right. I think that's not the best like metrics for being like a successful human, for sure. And I think you're right. You've got to just be you, and it's one of the things that I think is really like, when you see someone who is totally themselves, they may be like wearing a unicorn costume, like in the middle of Times Square, and they're doing their thing. And you're like, okay, that's weird. But like, there's a part of you that just really respects someone who is doing something like that, because you're like, okay, well, this person is doing what they felt like doing. They woke up and they wanted to dress like a unicorn and like go to work with their briefcase in this costume. And that's awesome. So I feel like, the more you can be you, the more you sort of like, you really like stand out to everyone, because people just love people who are confident, even if you are confidently believe in crazy things. Take Trump, for example. I mean, I think that's a good example. He was someone who just seemed like they knew what they were talking about, and people are like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Well, and sometimes following your thing may not be really popular, like, and I don't mean popular like politically. I mean, just it might not strike a chord with everybody. But if it's what you enjoy doing, if it's like what you're passionate about, like, if you make like these extraordinary, cutting boards or, whatever it may be, whatever you're passionate about. I mean, I really think that's when you kind of find like peace with like the direction, but I mean, you're always going to still stay hungry. But I think it's really important that you kind of, find your voice and follow it. But
I 100% agree.
So actually the pets were really good for the entire show.
They were really good.
I was waiting for one of them to like jump up on you.
I know, and knock the camera over.
But the cat was trying to talk. I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rachel, I've got to know about this TikTok. What did you do in this TikTok to like garner so much like ire from the audience?
So I did like a duet one where you like watch somebody else's and you react to it. Well, it was this kid, and he was pouring a gallon of hot sauce on something and a gallon of pepper and a gallon of salt. And my commentary was, wow, that's so wasteful. There's so many better things you could be doing with all of that. Like, they're starving kids all over the world. Like, that's very wasteful. And
I would do this.
It was all hate. It was, who cares what he does with his money? What's your net worth anyways? And then you go to look at these profiles, and the kids are like 12 years old. So like for me, I don't, it's nothing, but it was just that. It was a reaction video to somebody being wasteful. And I wasn't being mean or anything like that. It was just like, bro, that's wasteful.
Yes. And what does it say about where we are as a society that like we can do things like that and people actually watch it? I mean, I agree. I'm going to go ahead and comment on that, and I will be the 539th.
Yeah, I will too.
Thank you.
I think I'm sure everybody, Rachel, who is listening to this will now go and check that one out.
Yes.
Be curious about
my
it.
TikTok's going to blow up now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I think this was a good conversation, and Evette, obviously it was wonderful to be able to reconnect with you, and I hope to see you in person again soon.
Yes.
Too long. But really appreciate your insight on a lot of this stuff, because, the world is changing, and this year has been hell. Hopefully last year rather, but hopefully this year things are going to look brighter for everyone. And where can everyone find out more about you? Website, social media?
Yeah, for sure. So I mostly use Instagram and Facebook. Those are kind of like my two big platforms. And so I'm Evette Rios on those. It's Evette. My mom spelled it that way. She was being creative. And then my website, which is evetterios.com. So those are kind of the best places to figure out what I'm doing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, we lost you there for a second.
I know. I'm sorry.
Right back in. That must have been the cat.
Want to participate?
No.
Evette, anything that we didn't cover that you wanted to share with the audience?
No, I mean, I'm just so excited that you're doing this. You've got, I'm sure you guys know this, but Richard is like a god in the food space. And it's just awesome you've just constantly like shown so much humility and so much desire to help others and mentor others. And you have like zero ego. And it's so awesome that you do what you do. And so I just commend you so much for it. Cause you could really be a total asshole if you wanted to.
Well, that's super kind of you to say, but I also, as I look back on my career, and I even referenced, working with you, that I really got something out of that experience. I told Vicky the same thing. It's like, hey, there's things I learned working with you. And I think the minute people put the walls up and it's like, I don't need to hear your way. I know the way. Mm-hmm. You really kind of stop learning. And for me, like I think the curiosity is like what kind of keeps me going. And I find that you surround yourself with amazing people and inspiring people and knowledgeable people, then you kind of just keep getting, your cup keeps getting filled up with more stuff. And I'm telling you, working with you was absolutely, it was fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Same here.
The energy continues to come across, and I really want to see you in person, and you're always welcome. So
let's do it. Okay. So I went to Virginia just last week because I needed to get away for a few days. I went to this place called the Northern Neck. Do you know where this is? I'm in Leesburg is where I live. Okay. Cool.
Where is it? Was it Northern Virginia or? So
the town was called Lancaster or Lancaster. I don't know how you guys pronounce it, but it was so they called the area the Northern Neck. The closest town, I'm trying to think. I'll
look it up. Well,
yeah.
How
but
often
it was
do you
gorgeous.
Come? Yeah.
No, I just went last week. We went for 3 days. I found this Airbnb and I just needed to get out of the house. And we did one of those like new COVID vacations. I'm not sure if you guys have done this, but we get in the car, we drive, everybody doesn't stop to pee. You just pee in the car. I've got 2 little boys, so that's fine. And then you get to the Airbnb, like one person goes and gets groceries, and then you just basically stay in this place and like don't talk to anybody. So that's what we did. And the place was lovely. The area was so beautiful. It was
Virginia
right on the Potomac.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay. Yeah. So you actually, maybe I'll look that up, but I don't think that's too far from us, but we have the restaurant here. We're kind of different sides of the spectrum, because we have the restaurant roots, which is like super casual, hand cut fries and burgers, ice cream, local wine. And then we have the culinary lab, which is like that's like the Willy Wonkas of kitchens.
Yes.
All kind of really cool stuff in there. But next time that you come this way, please let me know, and I'll give you the tour and we'll feed you. And
I would love it. It was so beautiful.
Yes.
I couldn't believe that I have never been there before, because it's got so much waterfront. I mean, it's a giant river, but it's like so beautiful. All those little inlets and towns, and it was great. We had an awesome time.
Is there anywhere that people can find the show Recipe Rehab nowadays?
So I thought it was on Hulu for a minute. It is still, right?
As far as I know, it's on Hulu. Yeah. I mean, cool. I would say as long as maybe as recent as like a year ago, I had people to like, hey, I just saw it, on like a local station in New Hampshire, whatever. I'm like,
yeah,
funny.
And I still run into people from time to time, but particularly when we were doing the show, I'd be like in the produce section. It was always in the produce section, and
it always is in the supermarket. Yes.
Yeah. They're like, I love you on the show. I mean, I'm buying this because you used it last week.
Yeah.
But it was
They
cool to
never
have
leave
that
the
connection.
supermarket. They just stay. They just kind of
Stay
walk
there
around the
waiting. Yeah.
supermarket.
Evette, thank you so much. Wonderful
Yeah,
to be able
thank
to
you
talk with you
guys.
again, and we'll stay in
Thank you.
touch and look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you,
very
Evette.
much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the conversation there with Evette Rios. We appreciate her time, and also we appreciate all of you. I want to say thanks to everybody that's continued to like and subscribe to the show, and also to all of our sponsors. This year, we brought on some new sponsors. Artiflame, who you know I've been using their grills for years. They're really more than a grill. I mean, this is something that if you want to elevate the outdoor cooking experience, get one of these at your restaurant or in your backyard. They are the funnest things to cook on. Great big fire in the center, and then surrounding that, this beautiful griddle and ring. It's really a piece of art, and they're the funnest thing to cook on. But check them out. Look at their website. There's a link on the podcast page that goes to all of our sponsors. And also check out Dry Ager. This is one of the most exciting pieces of equipment that we've gotten in our kitchens this year. Dry Ager makes the best dry aged beef cabinets. Really not even for beef. I mean, you can dry age anything in there. But we've been using them for steaks. We're now using them for some charcuterie, duck, pork, you name it, even some vegetables. And there's also some people out there that are actually starting to dry age with fish. So really cool. Check them out. One of our favorite pieces of equipment for this year. And also Verlasso salmon. We've been using Verlasso salmon for several years. Check out their product, get some of the Verlasso salmon in, try it out on your menus. I know your guests are going to love it. It's consistent, it's fresh, and it's sustainable. It's farm-raised salmon out of Chile, and every time we order it, it's always consistent and exceptionally fresh, great texture. Also want to say thank you to Comey. As all of you know, I'm very much in the recipes and staying organized, and Comey, spelled Kohmee, you can go to their website and check out the software. It's actually free now. You can actually use it for free and sign up and get an account and start building your recipe and menu management database. It's a great software. That's what we use to manage all of our recipes in our kitchens and restaurants. Huge fans of that. Anyway, thanks again to all of you. We'll see you next week with a new episode of Let's Dig In.